Welcome to the Entrepreneur Mindset Mastery Podcast, where we help you pull the weeds from the garden of your mind so that you can flourish in your life and business. With your hosts, entrepreneur coach Simon Page and business coach Robert Peterson. All right, welcome to the show. Today we are talking about the laws of gender, polarity, and relativity. And what's great about these are all laws that are focused on our emotional balance, right? These are the laws that using our perception, our reason, and approach how we approach. How do I want to say that? How we approach the influence of disharmony. We are able to take these and turn them into harmony in our lives. And so, to me, these have the capacity to be some of the most powerful of the, shall we call them passive laws? You know, the law of manifestation, attraction. These are active laws, right? You can do this process, whereas these you can't really participate in the law of gender. It just kind of is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, these are certainly more about your awareness and understanding.
That's the word I was looking for. Awareness. You know, we talk a lot about Viktor Frankl and how between stimulus and response lies our power to choose our response. And that's really the core behind these three laws.
Yeah, understanding that the universe has things going for you, and you can choose to look on one side or the other in a lot of the cases. And these laws just help you identify
especially polarity
potential, right? So let's start out. What is the law of gender?
You want to dive down this one?
Sure, let's do it. Yeah.
All right. Let's before you go into the two parts of the law of gender, let's make a caveat here. When we're talking about the law of gender, there's nothing here that is a conversation about biological gender, assigned gender, or gender identity. Okay, we're talking about the masculine and feminine duality of energy in the universe. All right, I just want to put that out there because, Robert and I are both very passionate about people being able to live their lives as they choose. But that's a conversation for a different show. This is just about how gender, masculine, feminine energy works in the universal laws.
Well, and recognizing that the second part of gender is just that gestation, right? Like the gender within a seed, the gender within an idea, the gestation of creation, and is also a part of this. And so let's just break that down. So the law of gender has two parts, right? The first is that everything's comprised of masculine and feminine energy, and then that everything has a gestation period. So let's talk about what is masculine and feminine energy, and how do they work together?
Yeah, masculine energy. I love the fact that we have gotten to the point where we're talking about how masculine versus feminine energy come into play. You know, masculine energy is that creative, practical, action-oriented kind of energy that is in the ebb and flow in the cycle of energy. We talk about masculine energy as being outward flowing, and that's the out of balance aspect of that. When the masculine energy is not counterbalanced with feminine, it can result in senses of needing to be in control, anger, conflict, bitterness, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, whereas, so powerful.
Yeah, where the feminine energy, that's the intelligent energy, the nurturing, intuitive, giving, and passive energy that's more inward flowing. So you have the whole cycle of the outward flowing masculine and the inner flowing feminine. And the thing to remember, about the feminine energy, when it's out of balance, it can feel vulnerable or weakened in personal power, right? So with that said, these two energies are required, not optional, required to create anything. And we talk about creation as specifically the definition of creation that we're using is how do we turn an idea into a reality in our physical world,
Mm,
right?
so powerful. I think one of the most misunderstood chapters in Think and Grow Rich is when Napoleon Hill
Mm,
tries to talk about the transmutation of sexual energy, right? The transmutation of sexual desire into, into other sources, right? Being able to redirect that. And he kind of gets lost in there. But I think this is what he's really talking about: is that masculine and feminine energies and how they're both together are a creative force, and that energy we've talked about, that we are creative beings, right? And both energies are required for us to really create something new. And so I think the awareness of those um, kind of changes the understanding of Napoleon Hill, right? Kind of clears some of that up. I definitely think it's finding that creative energy and using it, using it for your own good, right?
mm-hmm.
And so I like the idea that together they create a balance and they give us the benefits of being in harmony with ourselves, right?
Mm.
Recognizing both parts, both of those energies, and how they benefit us. And then I think it's part of like the soul, right? The soul is in control when both energies are present, and and I think that's what holds the ego at bay.
I think, well, I don't think that the soul holds the ego at bay. I think that, well, the soul is feminine energy and the ego is masculine energy. And I think that when the ego is counterbalanced with soul is when we have individuals with true character.
Nice, I like that.
Yeah.
And so then the second part of gender is really that incubation period, that gestation period. And of course we understand it for human beings, right? A human baby takes 9 months, right? And
Right.
give or take a week or two. Most seeds, the farmers know exactly what the gestation period is. And
Mm-hmm.
but this is when it comes to the universal laws, we're kind of talking about the gestation period of an idea, the gestation period of creative energy,
Of a
right?
dream.
Of a dream. And we don't know the gestation period, right? There's no scientific handbook to look up the gestation period of your dream. And I think
If only.
right.
Let's
And I
check
think
that one.
the challenge for many of us is that you get in the process and you're doing the work and you're doing the work and you're doing the work and you're just wondering. It's kind of like the science experiment when you were a kid and you put the little seed in the styrofoam cup and you set it in the windowsill of the school, and every day you ran over to the windowsill to see, has the seed sprouted through there yet? Is that little green sprout there? And the temptation is to want to dig it up, right?
Yeah.
And of course, if you dig up the seed, you take away all of the work that's been done. You really undo its ability to do what it's trying to do. And that happens to our dreams all the time, I believe, because we have a misunderstanding of the law of gender.
Oh, absolutely. The fact is, success takes time,
Mm,
right? It's not a question of I'm going to do, I'm going to be a public speaker and tomorrow I'm Tony Robbins. It's not going to happen, right? And one of the philosophies that I really love about this is that when you create a dream, like a seed, it needs water, nutrients, sunshine, etc., right? It needs certain nurturing to grow to fruition in that what's the word? Nascent state,
mm,
right? As it's being grown and just being, just starting to become. And in when we're talking about the 12 laws of the universe, the water, nutrients, and sunshine that your dream needs are positivity, a sense of abundance, and your happiness.
Mm.
Right? So many people get focused on the fact that it's not happening yet, and they're worrying. What if I chose the wrong thing, or what if I just put out a proposal? What if the client doesn't like it, and they're have a sense of contraction and negativity around the outcome? You're either not going to get that client, or you're going to get the type of clients that don't react to positivity, abundance, and happiness. You're going to get clients that react to the negative side of those things.
Well,
Right.
and worry, fear, and doubt just, if they don't kill the seed, they certainly extinguish it, right?
Yes.
They stunt its growth.
Stunted. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the idea that patience is not the ability to wait, but rather the ability to maintain faith and positive energy while you wait for a desired outcome.
So powerful.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that idea, that seed idea, right? Pulling up the plant or digging it up to see if there's roots there, just, destroys its chance to keep growing.
Right. Well, because if you're talking about a dream and you're digging it up, like you're to see if the roots are there yet, you're not operating from a place of faith.
Oh, so powerful.
It's like another good example of this is New Year's resolutions. Right? People say, I'm going to lose 40 pounds before my birthday in August, and they hit the gym on January 1st, but they don't see that massive weight loss by January 7th. and they say, oh, this isn't for me.
What's
Maybe I'll
interesting,
try again next year.
it's interesting how much our physical health and physical training is so similar to dream building and bringing dreams to fruition, right? Because to do something that, make that kind of radical change for your body, right? To lose weight, to eat healthier, to do those things requires discipline and consistency. And of course, it takes time. You can't go to the gym 5 times in a row and step on the scale and go, oh, I gained weight, right? Because you're switching from fat to muscle. You might be losing one thing and gaining another, and the idea, we just have that microwave mentality, right? Like, we want microwave results. We want Amazon shipping results. We want
the best way I've heard that is, if you go to the gym for an hour a day for 100 days, you will have a massively different result than if you go to the gym for 1 day for 100 hours.
Oh, so true. And it's really, bringing your dream to fruition requires that same level of discipline and that same level of commitment, especially in the beginning. We know how hard it is to develop those practices into a habit, right? Those first 100 days are typically the hardest, and they're the hardest in a physical workout. They're the hardest in building something that's going to turn into your dream or bring your dream to fruition. Those first 100 days of good habits to set yourself up for the future can be the most challenging.
Oh, without question.
But that's why the law of gender can be so helpful, right? To just recognize, if you're doing the thing, if you're doing the thing, trust that the results are going to come.
Trust the process.
And that's really going back, to the law of compensation, right? Recognizing that if you're putting the good out into the universe, that it will come back. It can't help itself. And so your awareness of the law of compensation, along with the law of gender, recognizing that it's going to come, but you may not know when, and staying in that positive, right? Staying in that balance of masculine and feminine energy can be so important.
Yeah. So let's talk now then when you're in those 100 days, let's talk about how we use the law of gender. And I mentioned before that you can't really use the law of gender. It's not something you really invoke, right? It's not like you're thirsty, you take a drink of water. It's more you need oxygen, so you're here, right? So how do we recognize it, and how do we keep it in mind?
I mean, I think that emotional awareness is a big part of it, right? So when you're in those 100 days and you feel frustrated, or you feel like something's missing, you're unsure, being able to turn those around and recognize, which energies am I honoring and which energies am I ignoring, right?
Yeah.
And being able to keep that balance between the feminine and masculine energy can be so important for having the right attitude and maintaining that attitude.
And I want to say something to that, if I can.
Of course.
We've talked. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I feel like this is a conversation that needs to happen more in the world, and so I want to take a second to honor this. We live in a society where for decades, approaching centuries, men have been, the word is escaping me, ridiculed. It's not the one exactly that I wanted. Men have been emasculated for expressing feminine energy. When we know that all of us, every single one of us, have both energies within us. We have a need for the balance created by the presence of both of those energies. And yet, our society, Western society at least, a lot, has taken this aspect that when a man expresses feminine energy, when he expresses vulnerability or softness, he is somehow less of a man. And I want to make this clear to everyone listening to this podcast that without being a man capable of expressing your feminine energy, right? Not saying your femininity, but your feminine energy. If you cannot, then you are destined to be out of balance.
So true.
So I want to just say, if you feel like you are surrounded by people who will ridicule you if you express your vulnerability or your tenderness or your softness in a situation, right? If you're sitting with your family and watching a movie and you're afraid to show that tear that comes to eye when Old Yeller dies, find yourself another circle of people or introduce them to these kind of concepts. Have that conversation, because sorry, I don't want to go, I mean, I'm taking a lot of time for this, but I feel like it's such an important conversation.
Well, and I think it applies to the other side. There's been this movement of trying to keep people in a box and not allowing us to process our emotions fully, right? Fully experience emotions. And emotions exist for a reason, right? There's signals to the brain, there's signals to the body to emit certain chemicals, to do certain things for our own good. And people miss out on the dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins that come from those feelings, right? And because we've been told to, push that anger down, or push that sadness down, or push that, hide it, don't put it, don't let it surface, don't let it show. And the truth is, when we stop those signals inside of us, it does terrible stuff to us, creates depression and all of these things, anxiety, puts the body into fight, flight, and freeze mode, when really all we're designed to do is experience those emotions and be aware of them. Oh, that felt different, and allow that emotion to go all the way through, right? And when the emotion goes all the way through, emotion is energy, right? And when we're trying to stop that energy and we try to block it inside of us, Well, guess what? Energy can't be created or destroyed. So now it's just stuck in our gut. It's just going to be sitting around there bouncing around like the ping pong ball on Pong. And it's really designed to flow through us, and we experience that energy, and it doesn't have to get stuck. But really that experience is saying, "Oh, I'm aware of it," right? Even anger is a good thing if you experience it as a signal, right? You experience the anger of, "Oh, wait, what's my body trying to tell me? What's happening in this situation?" And there's certainly times that anger can be appropriate, and
Absolutely.
you need it to save your life, or to save the life of a loved one, or to process something. And I think both the masculine and the feminine energies, emotional energies, have been boxed up, and,
Yeah.
we're told you can't be angry, you can't cry, you can't be sad, you can't be, and all of those things are necessary.
I think you just hit it on the head with the word process.
Mm.
The idea behind emotion is an emotion, like you said, is a message from the brain, from the subconscious mind to our conscious mind.
Mm.
Emotion is something that we need to process so that we can identify the meaning of it.
Mm. Yeah, for
Right?
me, it's the check engine light, man. And obviously, sometimes
That's good.
it's sometimes it's obvious, right? If old Yeller got killed and you're crying, you're like, okay, I get it. Life is valuable, right? That's the message. Those ones are obvious, but there's sometimes when you get angry, or you have, another emotional response, and you don't understand it. It's okay to say, "Ooh, oh, what was that?" Right? And ask
Mhm.
yourself, you need to plug in the little computer to find out why that check engine light is on,
Yeah.
and
So
what
many
code
people
it's
think that
sending you.
emotion is just something to react to.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to think of them as just the little warning lights, right? And there's both good and bad, and we love good emotions, but even good emotions are still sending a signal for a reason. And of course, we want to duplicate it, right? Figure out, ooh, what is that good thing that's happening that my body's reacting to? Because I'd like to keep doing more of that, but
Yeah.
not to the addictive point, right?
We're gonna actually touch on that in just a few minutes. If that is something that interests you, stick around, because when we get to the law of polarity, we're going to talk about how there's no such thing as a positive or negative emotion.
So good.
But first, let's talk about the law of relativity. Right? There's a great quote from Oprah Winfrey that says, if you look at what you have in life, you'll always have more.
Mm.
If you look at what you don't have in life, you'll never have enough.
Mm.
And that really sums this law up great.
Absolutely.
Right? This is the law that states that everything in our physical world is made real by its relationship to something else.
Mm. Yeah, this one's good because of the simplicity and the way it can challenge us to grow. For me, it's, I guess, when I was first taught, it was in relative to, doubling my salary, or making $10,000 a month was the big first one. And the idea for many people, when they hear, that you could make $10,000 a month, it sounds like, oh, that's a lot. But is 10,000 a lot in comparison to what you've experienced, or is 10,000 a lot compared to what's possible?
Right.
And it's always relative to what you compare it to, right?
Relative to your experience, $10,000 might be a lot of money. Right.
But comparing it to $100,000, right? And so you start looking at the size of things, right? Like you compare your foot to a building, or the building to a mountain, and it's like, everything it's relative to what you compare it to. And it's so powerful to realize that it's just a number, and it's only a small or big number based on what you compare it to.
Yeah, and the great thing about this, like you already said, that this is about it challenging us for growth, right? When it challenges us to grow, we have the opportunity to raise the vibration of our character. right? We've gone through the levels of character before on the show, and it's everything from victimhood to enlightened self. What's at the top?
Love.
Okay,
It's unconditional love.
unconditional love. That the ability to say, when I experience things that are like really negative, and that's how I take it, I'm bringing myself down on that level of character. And when I say, this is an opportunity for growth, we have a joking phrase around here, AFGO. When something quote unquote goes wrong, we call it AFGO, another freaking growth opportunity. AFGO. But the way that this works is we experience these challenges to strengthen our character, and then the things in our physical world are made real by those relationships that we create in our mind about how that's going to exist in our world, right? The idea that your that thought got away from me.
Well, I was just going to tag on to your AFGO because
Go ahead.
one of the greatest lines I was taught is, it's not good or bad, it just is, right? And so even when something bad happens to you, man, it just is, right? That's the situation I'm in. It just is. Got a flat tire in the car, just is. It's a thing, right? And that's not to say that the thing didn't happen. It just is, right? And it's something that requires us to deal with it, and we don't have to get so emotionally stacked up over it.
Right. Yeah,
but I like that opportunity to grow because it really is all in how you look at it, right? And relativity gives you a chance to change your perception, right? The size of something, including an amount of money, is only big relative to how we label it, how we think about it, right? In relationship to what we know.
One of my favorite questions to ask people who say $5,000 is a lot of money for a coaching program is, how long do you want to keep saying $5,000 is a lot of money?
That's a great question.
So one of the things that I love one of the ways that I love to illustrate this comes from one of my favorite authors, and the quote is, "Nothing is real until we assign a meaning to it," and that's from Richard Bach in the book Running from Safety. And if you haven't read this book, this is the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is a great book about developing self-identity. And if Richard Bach's philosophy of self-identity were summed up in Jonathan Livingston Seagull as a primer, Running from Safety then becomes the collegiate textbook, right? In the Running from Safety, Richard Bach goes back into his consciousness to find the 10-year-old self of himself that he left behind when he grew up too fast. And he goes back and he's teaching his 10-year-old self everything that he's learned in 50 years of living. He remembers, and this is how one of the twists of the book, because Dickie Bach also has things to teach Richard. And Richard remembers a water tower from his childhood, but not what it means, right? And so Dickie tells him this story, and he puts it it's like a chapter long story, but the gist of it is, growing up on a farm in Arizona, there was a water tower on the farm, and every day one of the kids had to climb the water tower, call out the number to somebody else down below where the water level was, and then climb back down. And it was this rickety, thin, almost vertical ladder to get up the water tower. And Dickie was terrified of that climb. And he got angry with himself one day and decided that he was not going to be a little boy anymore who couldn't climb the water tower. And he spent a whole afternoon climbing to one rung and waiting until he could whistle. If he could whistle, he was okay. He could take the next rung. And he had he fighting with his inner demons on every rung. He would look down and get all woozy, and he had to fight with that. He was overcoming all these challenges and everything. It was amazing to watch the process of how Richard in the book illustrates all of the mental challenges that he goes through and how he conquers them, until at last he gets to the top and he sees the water in the water tower. And he has this moment of victory. And he turns around from the water tower and he looks down and he says something like, "While I was climbing, someone changed the world." Because from height, everything became tiny and small and relative, and you could see a whole different perspective, and it was beautiful. And Richard Bach actually attributes that memory to being the thing that led him to a career, a life of flying airplanes. Because when he said the lesson he took away was that altitude equals beauty and wonder. Actually, here's a quote. Overcome fear, behold wonder. That was what he said was his takeaway. And this sums up this law of relativity perfectly, because he could have assigned that climb up the water tower as the most terrifying event of his entire young life, and never again will he take 2 steps higher than the ground. And that could have been his assignment of that meaning. But he instead assigned it with overcome fear, behold wonder, and thus began a lifetime of learning how to overcome fear.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, that really is taking responsibility for the emotions that he felt, right? He's taking responsibility for the fear.
Yes.
And so one of the things we hear people say all the time is, well, that person made me sad, or you make me angry. And right. I think, one of the recognitions is that nobody can make any of us feel anything. And we have to own that for ourselves. Right. And so our response.
It's really important to understand this. So many of us make those meaning assignments without cognitive thought. Right? If you say, because I did for years during my growth through this whole entrepreneurship thing, if you say in your mind, I hear you say nobody can make us angry, but that person made me angry. Right? I don't understand how I can disconnect from that. The reason why is because I was making an assignment of his intent subconsciously. Right?
Oh, so that's
so
powerful.
You have
right?
to be able to look deeper than the surface. This is one of the deepest truths that I had to overcome. There is no one in this world with the capacity to make you feel an emotion. Period.
Absolutely. And it is interesting how we judge them and we judge their intention, and many times they're operating at the highest level that they're capable of. And so we really need to cut them some slack. But also the bigger piece is, like we've talked about many times before, is who are you letting pull the levers in your mind, right? And,
yes, indeed.
And you have the choice, right? Are you going to allow your kids to manipulate you and make you angry and push your buttons, right? We always call it, right, push your buttons. Oh, your partner knows right how to push your buttons.
Yanking your chain.
Yeah. and the truth is that you get to choose how you respond.
Yeah.
And that's so powerful when you take responsibility for that choice and recognize that even if something makes you angry, or even if something makes you sad in your own mind, right, that you still can choose how to express that. And so A, you can choose how to receive it. B, you can choose how to express it. There's all kinds of power in that. And there's all kinds of control in that, but it all lies with you.
Oh yeah. I don't want to go too far a tangent again. But there's something really important about this fact that people should take away from this. We say no one has the power to make us angry. No one has the power to give you an emotion. That's your own processing, even if you're processing it subconsciously. Have you ever been in a situation where two people are having an argument and then you separate and then you come back later when the heat is gone and you talk about what happened and you both remember it differently? This is why the meaning behind an event controls our experience of reality. And the meaning comes from our minds, not the event. The only events that can be called irrevocable truth are events that take place in the physical world, as in responses to physics, math, numbers, things like that. Right? If I withdraw $50 from my bank account, I can't have the experience of drawing 1,000. Right? But if it has to do with anything interpersonal, there are three realities. There's your perception through your lens, their perception through their lens, and what actually happened in the middle without emotion involved.
And most people will never remember what happened in the middle, even though they'll think they do. Yeah.
Because they see through their lens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's the way that we relate to things that determines our reality.
Absolutely.
That's our truth.
One of the great stories, the husband backs out of the driveway and wife walks down to the bottom of the driveway and grabs the newspaper, and the husband stops thinking she'll give him a kiss and say goodbye, and she just turns and walks back into the house. And so he drives to work and he spends the whole day thinking to himself, "Oh, she's mad at me. She didn't kiss me goodbye. I wonder what she's mad about." And then he imagines all of these things that she's mad about. And
did I leave the toilet seat up?
Yeah. Or put it on backwards, squeeze the toothpaste from the bottom, whatever list of things. But he spends 8 hours imagining all these reasons that she's mad at him. And guess what happens when he gets home? They get into a big fight. All because he's planted all of these seeds in his own mind that, she simply went down to the bottom of the driveway, grabbed the newspaper, and was heading back into the house because she forgot her slippers and her feet were cold. Right?
I mean, or she was distracted by the headline. Who knows?
And had nothing to do with him at all. And it's so easy for those things to happen, right? We ruminate all day long on an assumption, on a judgment, on applying meaning to something that isn't there, and so the most powerful thing in the world is, especially for relationships, is to not make those assumptions, right? Or I encourage people always assume the positive, right? Always assume their intent is positive, which can go a long, long ways. But if you doubt that their intent is positive and your relationship matters, you have the right to ask, "Hey,
communication.
You didn't give me a kiss this morning on the driveway. What happened?" And she'd be like, "You were on the driveway?
Yeah.
I saw you backing out. I thought you were in a hurry to get to work." Right? I mean,
I was looking at the paper.
Yeah. So but that happens to a lot of couples, a lot of people that we ruminate and create. You create your reality. What are you choosing to create with your thoughts and how you're assigning meaning to stuff? So important.
So let's talk about how we use the law of relativity. Again, use in air quotes, because this is another one it's a passive law. It just is. Right?
Well, except that we do have the power to create our own reality, right? We do. I mean, there's a power in the story you tell yourself, the meaning that you assign to things, and choosing to assign meaning that is beneficial to you and that's taking you in the direction of your dreams is super powerful.
And I think that one of the ways that we can use this is to monitor our thoughts, right? When we find ourselves creating those negative stories.
Mm.
Let's shift that. Right? I was having a conversation this morning, and I recognized a strategic change in the way I was processing inputs. Something happened, and it was someone being thoughtless. Hear that? I'm assuming someone did something that was a minor inconvenience to me, and I started to say, when they did that, I got so pissed. And before it came out of my mouth, it got processed and changed to, I found it mildly annoying when. And those are the little shifts that start to become habitual when you start monitoring your thoughts, right? Because I got so pissed when they did X, Y, Z is such an energetic difference, but from that was mildly annoying.
Well, and then it really goes to mildly annoying to don't even notice it, right? I mean, and that's what's so powerful about being able to assign the meaning, and then recognizing that the challenges that we face are an opportunity to grow our character or an opportunity for us to slide back down those levels of character, right?
Right. It's easy to be a victim.
and then you're a victim, and then other people are in control. And there's lots of people that want other people in control. There's a reason that communism has so much power, is because people like being taken care of, and it doesn't allow that freedom of assigning meaning. And so I think it's important just to recognize that you have the power to assign the meaning. You have the power to choose what's important. And when a number, or especially when a dream seems so big that you're like, whoa, I don't think that's possible. What are you comparing it to? Right? Are you comparing it to your highest level? Because we already know that your highest level isn't the level of your dream. And so you need to compare it to the person that's at that level, or on their way to that level. And that comparison, right, that relationship you create changes your perspective, and certainly creates possibilities, instead of your brain going, whoa, that's just too big of a gap. Right? And so assign meaning that helps you get to where you want to go. Assign meaning that believes in your dream.
In a much more practical application too, just branching off of what you were just saying, when you feel that disparity between where you are and your dream, that's what goals are for. Goals are about setting milestones. And if your dream, the way you have it envisioned, it seems too big in the moment, dial it back to your next level goal. Right? That will keep you from being overwhelmed by that. And if your goal overwhelms you, chunk that down even more.
All right, we better jump into the law of polarity, because it's going to take all the rest of the time.
It is.
So, of course, polarity is everything has two poles, a positive and a negative. We know that from our planet. Most of us have experienced that from batteries and magnetism, right? Magnets like attracts opposites. I mean, opposites attract like pushes, right? My favorite things, right? To take two magnets and use one to push the other one away, because it looked like there's this force field pushing the other magnet away. That was always one of my favorite little science tricks, right? That using one magnet to push another, and they push without touching because of that polarity. And of course, good and evil. Everybody wonders why do bad things happen? Why does there have to be evil in the world? But if there isn't evil in the world, then the good doesn't feel as good, right?
Right.
If there's not bad, it's hard to feel the good. If there's not hate and bad relationships, it's hard to feel love and good relationships. So hot and cold, are and they're kind of relative too, but they're the polar opposites, of course. And then there's everything in between.
Right. They all exist on a continuum, right? Varying degrees of hot and cold, good and evil, right? But that continuum has to exist for us to be able to have a rich full life of experience. Because if all there was massive love or massive hate or massive hot or massive cold, if there was nothing in between, how would we know the pleasure of sitting on the backyard next to a burning barbecue in 76-degree weather?
With a cold drink and a
There you go. Or sitting in the shade when it's 85 or 95, or I won't even go into what the temperatures are out here, right? But the emotions, and here's what we were talking about before, emotions are not positive or negative. They're neutral, right? Remember the law of relativity. No experience that you have has a positive or negative. There's only one end of the continuum or the other, right? The fact is, if you stunt your emotions, if you say, I won't allow myself to love because I might get hurt, then you also eliminate your ability to be hurt. Well, if you say, I'm not going to love because I might get hurt, then you're limiting your capacity to experience love. Right?
Absolutely.
You can't have the love without the potential for pain. You can't have hot without cold. Right? If you imagine the extremes of that continuum being the top and the bottom of a sine wave, then however you limit either the top or the bottom out of fear, you're limiting the other one as well.
So powerful. Well, and I think, we've been talking a lot about dreams, and I think one of our first reactions to a dream idea or a big idea, right? Our brain instantly comes up with well, that's not possible. But even the idea that the brain says that's not possible means that the exact opposite has to be true by law. That because the impossibility exists in our mind, the possibility to complete it has to exist.
Because of the law of relativity, you're not saying that's not possible. You're saying that's not possible for me.
Absolutely. But because your brain has said no, the yes has to be possible. And so for me, I love that by law, it has to be possible. So anytime I get an idea and my little brain goes, oh no, and I go, oh yeah, because that automatically means, oh, that can be done, right? As soon as your brain says, well, we can't do that. Oh yeah, that can be done, right? And you don't have to know how, you just have to know that the possibility exists. It has to by law. Because if you can have the negative thought, the positive absolutely has to be possible. And that's so powerful. I think a lot of our limiting beliefs, come at us that way, right? And the truth of the limiting belief is the exact opposite. It has to be true. It has to be possible.
Yeah, I am. One of the things that I've been exposed to a lot has been the whole concept of focus on the positive, right? In fact, sometimes you'll hear coaches say, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? Right? To bring that idea of the continuums into focus, right? Sometimes that can be frustrating, but I think it's really important when we're looking at this to realize that how we talk a lot about, I'm explaining as we go here. This is, how we talk a lot about the lizard brain trying to protect you?
Right.
The lizard brain wants you to maintain the status quo, right? Stay in your comfort zone. Sometimes our highest and best future self lives outside of our current comfort zone.
Most likely.
Right? And that's where this law comes into play. If you want to stay inside your comfort zone, you can't become that highest and best version of yourself. Right? And I think one of the things that people tend to forget, maybe even, and maybe that's something that I should investigate too, because this is resonating really deeply. Something that people tend to forget is that when you're building a dream, you're building let me not even say dream. When you're building a vision of the future, you are designing the self that you want to become, right? That is your aspirational self, and maybe you might have something to weigh in there. How do you, when you're trying to envision not just the life you want to lead, but your aspirational self, how do you look at that and apply this law and say this has to be possible when it's such, potentially so different from where you are in the present?
Right. Well, and it has to be so different, right? Because it's going to require different relationships. It's going to require a different level of thinking about money. It's going to require a different level of thinking about your capabilities. And so the really cool part is, I love that we're human beings, right? And the being is the first step in the be do have, right? And when we get that right, when you've got that vision down to how you feel doing the thing that you're doing, and how you're acting doing the thing that you're doing, right? So your vision, I think Kevin shared it right in our second episode, just that vision that you read to yourself, that who is this person that you're becoming? How do they feel? What are they doing throughout the day? How is their life different than your life now? And I think the polarity is really seeing yourself at the next positive step, right? Seeing yourself at each of those next positive steps in the growth cycle is so powerful. And for many people, these laws are woo-woo, right? They're emotional woo-woo. People talked about Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking as a woo-woo book.
Right.
But science now is coming out and proving that our intention, right, the intentionality in the human mind can be measured. The intention, when you put out positive intentions, you put out positive thoughts, positive prayers, they can be measured. And when they're done in groups of 8 or groups of 10 or groups of 12 or groups of 1,000, not only can they be measured, but they can have a physical manifestation, a physical impact on a human life, on a plant life, they've even proven that we can impact computers that are supposed to be randomly generating a positive or negative, positive or negative, positive or negative, like flipping a coin, right? It should be 50%. And the human mind can sit in the room and say, I want more positive. I want more positive. I want more positive. And the computer changes and the counts scientifically change. The numbers change. Like these things that we're learning about the brain and its power and the power in groups it's just mind blowing.
Do you have resources to that kind of?
So the book, The Power of Eight. Well, I think it's
let's put a link to that in the notes.
Yeah, we'll need to do that. I want to say it's Lynn McTaggart. The book's The Power of Eight. Yeah, Lynn McTaggart. And she's a journalist, and so she took a journalistic approach to that study, and it's mind blowing. It's literally mind blowing. Like you'll read that book and you'll be just blown away by the results. In fact, her results were so overwhelming, like she started hiding them. She didn't want to tell people because they think she was crazy. the things that were happening.
Wow.
Yeah, it's powerful, and the power of groupthink, because that's what the power of 8 is. That they found that 8 people working together or having a similar intention together is powerful, and so they were using these power groups of 8 to do healings and other positive intentions. But such good stuff. And the law of polarity is what, makes that all possible. So the idea of focusing on the positive versus the negative, we've talked about that vibrational levels, right?
Right.
Coach Lisa shared, shame and guilt are down here at the lowest vibrations, and joy, love, and peace are up at the highest vibrations. So that's not to say that your emotions won't have a different vibrational feeling, right? And so that's why I think emotions get labeled positive or negative. But the truth is, you can have anger and have it be in the higher vibrations, and anger that happens to be in the lower vibrations, right? So it's really the vibration that you're in.
I think every emotion has a word for the different places where it exists on the vibrational scale.
Ooh, that's pretty good. That sounds like a lot of
We
work
have annoyance.
for us.
We have annoyance and we have rage.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have affection and we have passion.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. But the truth is that if you're experiencing the negative, you have the ability to flip it, right? And reframe it in the positive. And that can be challenging, right? For limiting belief, that can be challenging for an event that happened to us. But the power is ours.
Yeah,
to
we should
reframe that and take
should actually
responsibility for that.
Sorry. I think we should talk about limiting beliefs, because when you're trying to invoke the law of polarity, having limiting beliefs can be kind of crippling, right? It's really important to correct our limiting beliefs. It's not okay to just say, well, that's who I am, right? Because when you have a limiting belief and you feel yourself in a vibrational state that supports that limiting belief, it's not really possible to look at the other side, to focus on the positive, right? So as an example, right, let's say that you're really unhappy at your job. Your manager's been on your case. You're being overworked and not extra paid, that sort of thing. You're just fed up and you're done with it. But you have a limiting belief of a fear of failure, right? And so that limiting belief prevents you from going and looking for another job. The high likelihood, like 99%, is that you'll stay at the job that you're unhappy in, out of that limiting belief holding you back from saying, no, I deserve to have a better life. I deserve to have a better job. I deserve to be appreciated.
And that limiting belief will help continue to devalue or lower your self-worth to the point where you'll be saying to yourself, I'm not worth a better job. And this is where I belong.
Yeah.
And so, the limiting belief actually paints you right into the place that you are, which is why so many people feel stuck.
Yeah. Remember that limiting beliefs are just your lizard brain being so successful for so long that it has started to change those limiting thoughts into limiting beliefs.
When it's the story you tell yourself about the situation, right? And so raising your awareness, right? Recognizing I feel stuck, or I feel that emotion, right? Of wanting more and not being worthy of it, right? And so write them down, right? When you get that feeling, write it down. And then I encourage you to create an affirmation statement that's the opposite. I am worthy. I am better than this, right? I am capable of so much more. And use those I am statements as part of your morning routine. And that can be a great way to help rewire your brain towards the positive success that you want, or the ability to even see the positive side that you want to be able to see.
So good.
Absolutely.
So that about wraps it up for the law of polarity. So yeah, this has been a great conversation. If you have a comment, if you have questions about how these three laws govern your life, how to use them to have a better life, feel free to reach out. Depending on what platform you find this podcast in, feel free to email us. Find Robert at addvaluetolife.com. Find me at simonpage.com. Or if there are comments, go ahead and drop one below. there
Absolutely. That's right. Somewhere.
somewhere.
Yeah. Like and share the show and leave a review if you're listening on a podcast channel. We appreciate, just expanding our network and helping others. So if you enjoyed the show, please share it with others.